Mortal Kombat has been rebooted and reset twice now, giving us 3 versions of reality and even 3 versions of certain characters. Sometimes it's not even the same character at all. For a fast example, this man on screen is literally Sub-Zero, and I'm not joking about that. Yeah, it gets pretty wild, so today I wanted to discuss the biggest downgrades in Mortal Kombat, as in the worst possible versions of the character. Some are polar opposites, while others are just unrecognizable, or like just mentioned, not even the same character. Today's video will cover it all, but if we reach 2,000 likes, then I'll make a sequel video about the best versions, absolute glow-ups that made me love characters who I never cared about before. No, seriously, Ashura is one of my favorite characters now, and it's because Mortal Kombat 1 made her awesome. So yeah, make sure to like the video if you want a sequel. Then finish that combo by subscribing and ringing the bell so you never miss any future content. Alright everyone, without any further ado, let's begin. So first up, I wanted to talk about downgrades. These characters aren't terrible per se, but still much lesser than the original counterparts. For example, Goro. This guy was the original champion of Mortal Kombat. Nobody was able to beat him until Liu Kang. And even after that, the guy barely lost to anybody else. Then, believe it or not, he was a good guy for a bit. That's right, he straight up switched sides, and that was really interesting. So take all that information and compare it to NetherRealm Goro, who loses way more fights, never switches to the good side, and also completely disappears after Mortal Kombat 9. Yup, that's right, he gets defeated by Kotal in the prequel comics for Mortal Kombat X, and we never see him again. Which, after 4 games, is definitely rough, an absolute downgrade to be sure. Very similar to Shiva, believe it or not. She jobs way too much in Mortal Kombat 9, and the Mortal Kombat 11 version just doesn't feel like Shiva, while also being way too small, and also her outfit's too generic. You get the idea. Similar to Goro, but not as big of a fall off. Unlike Noob Saibot, this man got absolutely wrecked by NetherRealm Studios. The mystery was killed almost immediately in the very first game, Mortal Kombat 9. Then afterwards, he got reduced to a jobber. Keep in mind, this guy soloed Goro in the original timeline, making him one of the few characters to ever do that. Also, we didn't know his origin until many games later in Deception, and even at that point, we still didn't know what Noob Saibot was up to. His plan was a mystery, and that was interesting. So now compare that to NetherRealm's version, who loses pretty much every fight he's in and is always serving under somebody else with no real plan of his own whatsoever. Then perhaps worst of all, his mystery relation to Sub-Zero is spoiled immediately, so the mystery is gone. Yeah, Noob Saibot might look really cool in the NetherRealm games, but that's about all I can say for him. However, last but not least, there's one more character in the downgrade category that I wanted to talk about, and that's Chameleon in Mortal Kombat 1. Because almost nothing about this character is correct, from her appearance to her origin to how she behaves, her powers and abilities, all that stuff. It's all wrong. Now don't get it twisted, I'm happy she appears in story mode and has some dialogue, but also that's the bare minimum. She could be replaced by a completely different unnamed soldier and nothing would change, because nothing she does in story mode relates to Chameleon. She never turns invisible or changes her weapons on the fly, which is her entire gimmick. And also, why is she an Outworld? Why is she working with the Umgadi? None of this makes sense because Saurians are supposed to be from Earthrealm, but somehow NetherRealm got that messed up. Yeah, listen, I understand Chameleon barely had lore in Armageddon, but Mortal Kombat 1's version isn't even Chameleon really. Nothing about it is correct. Anyways, next up is category number 2, much worse adaptations of the characters. So not completely ruined, that's going to be saved until later in the video. But still, these characters suffered quite a lot after the reboot. A great first example is Shao Kahn. In Mortal Kombat 11, he's losing almost every fight until the DLC story expansion. And not only that, but he appears really dumb in these games, like a might equals right kind of guy, which, don't get it twisted, Shao Kahn's always been very strong. However, on top of that, he's supposed to be a master schemer. He always was in the original games. So I've got no clue why the writers made him dumb after the reboot. That's not supposed to be his character. Then sadly in Mortal Kombat 1, he got reduced from Khan to General, doesn't look like the character, his origin makes no sense either, it's all completely wrong. For anyone not aware, Shao Kahn is implied to be a god of Outworld in the same way that Raiden is a god of Earthrealm, meaning he doesn't have a species or relatives per se, again just like Raiden, but in Mortal Kombat 1 he's somehow a race of dragon people, I guess, with a dad and everything else, none of which makes any sense. He's also no longer ruler of Outworld, instead it's Sindel now, who's never ruled Outworld before. That's a brand new change. So yeah, Shao Kahn was done pretty dirty by NetherRealm. The only reason he's not in the worst category is because I think they're building him into something bigger for the next Mortal Kombat game. However, next up I want to talk about Jax, because there's some nuance to this character, especially in Mortal Kombat 11. NetherRealm tried to make him more layered, but in doing so made him a much worse character. But first we gotta talk about MK9. Jax loses several fights in this game and just comes off like the Worf character. For any non-Star Trek fans, that means he's powerful enough that when he loses, it shocks the player, but nothing else above that, which is why he gets beaten by Ermac so embarrassingly, and this trend continues in a lot of the recent movies too. And for a quick fun fact, Jax never lost his arms in the original Mortal Kombat games. Instead, the metal stuff was an upgrade, cybernetic enhancements to be specific, but Jax never lost his arms to anybody, because back then he was the strongest human on Earth. I'm not making that up. Jax was meant to be kinda close to Liu Kang's level. He was an absolute beast. If you don't believe me, look at him fight Quan Chi right here and making it look easy. Keep in mind, this same Quan Chi defeated Shang Tsung in a fair 1v1, meaning that Jax is stronger than Shang Tsung, like straight up, in the original games, but NetherRealm nerfed him a lot to be the Worf, meaning he loses to the much stronger villains. But then in Mortal Kombat 11, they broke Jax mentally as well, trying to make him this tragic character, but also a villain too, which was just very sad to see. Yeah, definitely a much worse version of the character. I think it's okay to give depth, but don't do it at the expense of the character's badass factor. Next up, let's talk about Ermac real quick, because that's easy to summarize. In the original games, he went from a villain made by Shang Tsung to a good guy after discovering his own purpose and goals in life. Then on top of that, he was overpowered as hell, because come on, the guy's thousands of souls put into one body, of course he's gonna be OP. But now fast forward to the NetherRealm version of Ermac, and nothing ever happens with his character. He's a minion to the bad guys the entire time. In Mortal Kombat 1, we got a glimpse of something different, right? He was King Jared now, that was cool. But then his latter ending backtracks on all of this, and he's just an evil monster again. However, at least he wasn't nerfed and turned into an incest lover, like Scarlet was. That's right, sometimes NetherRealm trashes their own characters. Scarlet is a great example. She used to be a blood homunculus created by Shao Kahn to destroy entire armies or key specific targets. So for example, Quan Chi in MK9, but then fast forward to MK11 and Scarlet was now an orphan adopted by Shao Kahn, who then taught her blood magic, and now she's in love with him, wants to marry him, have his babies, all that stuff. Yeah, the NetherRealm writers definitely just got done watching Game of Thrones. That's an undeniable fact. Alright everyone, before discussing the absolute worst adaptations of characters, let's talk about characters who were changed so much that we don't recognize them. Like, who is this character? And I'm gonna rapid fire, so stay with me. Scorpion in Mortal Kombat 1 is literally not Scorpion. Instead, he's Kuai Liang, the younger brother of the original Sub-Zero. Then on top of that, his clan was not murdered, his family was not murdered, he's not from the NetherRealm, he's not undead, none of that. Literally not Scorpion. Next up is Tanya. She looks completely different and is not a traitor, she's not evil at all. Yeah, in no way is this Tanya. It could have been a brand new character. Then finally, we have two characters in one. Havik is literally Dairu in Mortal Kombat 1. He's not even Havik, which explains why his personality is different in the worst way. Instead of whispering all the time and being a bit cheeky, you know, messing with the player, Havik in Mortal Kombat 1 is always screaming, complaining about fascism and all this other stuff that was never part of the character. But okay, you've all waited long enough. The most ruined characters in Mortal Kombat history. First up, we gotta talk about Sindel from Mortal Kombat 11, because originally Sindel's husband was killed by Shao Kahn when he conquered Edenia, and the grief caused Sindel to take her own life. It's also loosely implied that Shao Kahn was going to force himself onto her, so yeah, she took her own life. Yet for some reason, MK11 thought, let's bring Sindel back, only this time she loves Shao Kahn and hates her daughter, nearly killing her. Oh, and also she murdered murdered her husband, but made it look like Shao Kahn did, for some odd reason. Yeah, the complete opposite of the character. I don't get why they did this, but thankfully it was undone in Mortal Kombat 1. Next up is Shang Tsung, but only in Mortal Kombat 9, and also only his younger version. Yeah, hyper specific, but stay with me, okay? Because despite being younger and stronger, Shang Tsung loses every single fight, and all of his best moments from the original games were given to Quan Chi, because I guess NetherRealm wanted Quan Chi to be extra interesting. So to do that, they took all the cool stuff Shang Tsung had done and just gave it to Quan Chi, like resurrecting Sindel, for example. Yeah, so definitely the absolute worst version of the character, but thankfully MK11 redeemed this, and also Mortal Kombat 1 to an extent. Which leads me to Natara. Not as bad as Sindel, but still absolutely ruined the character. In the original timeline, Natara's race was enslaved by Shao Kahn, so she hates him, but in Mortal Kombat 1, that's gone completely. So instead of being chaotic neutral and kind of an anti-hero, Natara is just a minion now who works for an evil race of vampires that want to eat everybody. Yeah, or in other words, the most generic, boring version of a vampire she could possibly be, and that's a shame because vampires can be nuanced if written well, because they're immortal and live for thousands of years, so their personalities can be really complex, but NetherRealm said, no, Natara's just evil vampire lady, which once again is unfortunate. But there you have it, everyone, the worst versions of Mortal Kombat characters that I could think of, but if I missed anyone, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Then before leaving, make sure to like the video. If we get 2,000 likes, I'll make a sequel, then subscribe so you never miss any future content. Alright everyone, and make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdogs.